and welcome to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. I'm John O'Neill. Each episode takes a look at a different aspect of the wonderful world of amateur theatre and features an amateur theatre maker talking about their theatrical life, theatrical loves, and the times when they've died on stage. Our Backstage Pass feature takes us behind the scenes at the Crescent Theatre, Birmingham, to discover more about what goes into making a great amateur production. Today's episode is all about the work of the late composer and lyricist Stephen Sondheim, and Luke will be talking to musical director and long-standing member of the Crescent Theatre, Gary Spruce, about his life and loves in amateur theatre. And I have been behind the scenes of the Crescent Theatre Birmingham's forthcoming production of Into the Woods to find out more about life in the pit. That's the orchestra pit. And I'll be speaking to some of the musicians down there in the pit, playing in the band for Into the Woods, to find out more about what it's like to fulfil this crucial role in a stage musical.
So we're delighted to welcome Gary onto the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, Gary. Lovely to see you and speak to you. So the composer and lyricist Stephen Sondheim passed away in November 2021, leaving the incredible legacy of his body of work in musical theatre. How many Sondheim musicals have you been involved in over the years, and do you have any favourites?
I've been involved, I think, in 4 or 5. So Sweeney Todd twice, Into the Woods twice, with this one coming up at the moment. Company and Assassins. My favourite, I like them all in different ways, really. I've got a fondness for Company, sure. I have to say. And also Assassins, because it's not done very often. I think it's really witty and nice. Quite political. But I think each one is very individual, and that's the glorious thing about Sondheim. Yeah. You know, everything is very different. So, yeah, I've enjoyed all of them that I've done. But maybe if I had to choose one, it would probably be Company.
Nice. In 1977, Sondheim expressed the view that hit tunes were irrelevant and that melody was merely a reflection of familiarity. His music is characteristic and very recognisable. What is it about his music that you particularly enjoy? Why do you think that the Crescent Theatre has successfully mounted so many of his works?
I think it often, the music, I think, often represents, you know, an almost perfect amalgam of lyrics, sure, and music, and I think Sondheim is very much lyrics led, which I think is why not writing catchy tunes as such, I think, makes it work all the better. It actually fits, for the most part. The music fits wonderfully and illuminates the words, whereas with many musicals, it's the other way around. The music comes first. Why are we being successful at the Crescent? So I don't know whether it's for me to say that we have been successful. We've got a long tradition of doing Sondheim, certainly, and I think the reasons that we do them well is because the Sondheim requires really good actors. Singing actors, and I think we've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate over 30 years I've been doing Sondheim to work with some really, really good singing actors, and I think that's what makes our productions of Sondheim particularly, I think, successful.
Yeah, nice. Do you have a favourite Sondheim song?
There are many of them I enjoy. I think I was looking at this question before. I was thinking about this question before I came. And I think I have a favourite Sondheim passage of music. Okay. And I think the last 10 minutes of Into the Woods is just wonderful. It's probably my favourite bit of musical theatre, the last 10 minutes. So I would say...
What is it about it that makes you love it as much as you do?
I think it just gradually builds. It's the it's the essence of Sondheim in a way. It's just a few small motifs that he works wonderfully and gradually builds up, and key changes and things like that. It just affects me a great deal. So I really do enjoy that.
So at the end of April and beginning of May, the Crescent Theatre is staging Into the Woods under your musical direction. It's a good example of a musical that resists an easy or happy ending and in fact deliberately subverts that idea in its structure. What is it about this musical, written by Sondheim and James Lapine, that drew you to it personally?
Well, in a sense, doing it now, I already know it.
Sure.
Having done it, I mean, having listened to it a number of times, but having MD'd it first about 25 years ago.
Okay.
So what drew me to it was knowing it pretty well from the previous time I'd done it, and learned it then, and knowing what a terrific time and what an enjoyable time and a fulfilling time I'd had doing it in the previous previous week's production we done around about the turn of the millennium. I like Into the Woods because it has this kind of seamless quality. It moves wonderfully from music to dialogue, and the music hardly stops. In fact, I mean there are the odd occasions where music stops and there's pure dialogue, but it must be for 90% of it that there is music either being sung or underpinning the dialogue, and I like it because it presents me as a conductor, as an MD, with a challenge, and you know, if you're going to carry on doing something, then you need to keep yourself challenged. But as a piece, I like it because of that, I think.
Yeah. You were just talking about challenge. I mean, being a musical director can come with a huge level of responsibility. So, how do you go about managing all of the roles and aspects of that?
I suppose my starting point really is that I'm lucky enough to work with people who probably know more about musical theatre than I do. And so I look upon my job is to create a really kind of secure framework for them to be able to perform their best. And so if you're in rehearsals with me, I get quite really obsessive about transitions, about entrances, about being secure and confident in what you're doing, because I think if that's happening, then people feel safe to try it and experiment with things. Getting a really good band, I think, is important, and obviously getting a really good cast is. But it's that sense I look upon. My main function really is to provide a framework and a context where people feel secure, and when they go out on the first night, I mean, there are always going to be nerves and things like that, but they feel really secure and that things have been well rehearsed, and you know, things are going to be okay.
Nice. What do you think are the specific challenges of MDing a musical like Into the Woods? I mean, we've sort of touched on that
kind
already,
of touched
slightly.
upon that really, and I think it's about holding the structure together and challenge. There are particular challenges with Into the Woods with the music underpinning dialogue, and there's the challenge of the music itself. And I've spent the last 3 days just editing the parts and looking at the parts, the different instrumental roles, and those are complex in themselves. So it's about, I suppose, the particular challenges coming up, I think, at first band call, where we try and put the whole thing together.
Yeah. So one of Sondheim's less commercially successful productions, Merrily We Roll Along, made Sondheim consider stepping away from the theatre altogether. So do you ever find that you can tell if a production is going to be successful as you're rehearsing it, or do you almost have to take a leap of faith sometimes and trust it'll all come together?
I think you've always got a feel as to whether things are going to be all right. And it's difficult to kind of quantize that or say what it is. But you get a good feeling about it or not, as the case might be. And I couldn't really kind of express it any clearer than that.
As a young composer and writer, Sondheim was mentored by Oscar Hammerstein II. So do you feel there's been anyone that's personally been a particularly significant mentor in your life, or is there anyone in the wider musical world who's inspired you?
I came actually to musical theatre in quite an odd way, because I mean my musical interests before I came to the Crescent over 30 years ago were quite conventionally classical. I played in orchestras. I was an organist. I was interested in kind of church music and things like that. And one of the things I did when I first came to Birmingham, I was invited to join a choir, the City of Birmingham choir. And at that time, the conductor was a guy called Christopher Robinson, who was a conductor also of one of the cathedral. He was a cathedral organist. And I mean, people still say now, people much better musicians than me, that he's the kind of equivalent to God, really, in terms of choral training. And I hope I learned something from him without in any way suggesting that I am, could touch, his garment, so to speak. But he did teach me a lot about, or I did take from his rehearsals, a lot of really useful stuff about how to get ensembles, groups to sing together, to articulate words, and I think in a sense, if it's not a question you're going to ask me, so I'll answer it anyway. If it was to say what do I think one of my strengths is, it's actually, and I do think it's come through in the Crescent over the last 30 years, we have really good ensemble singing. Yeah. People come together and we can do really complex music. And so I think I've learned a lot from him. And generally, I tend to conduct rather than lead from the keyboard when I do musicals. So I've done a lot of watching of good conductors and seeing what they do. And I find it quite interesting, just if I know a piece that they're conducting and I know awkward places, even if I've never got to conduct it myself, I'm quite like to see how they kind of get around these corners, so to speak. So that kind of thing.
Yes. Sondheim even tried his hand at playwriting during his lifetime. Have you ever been involved with productions that weren't specifically musicals? If so, what were they?
Oh, yeah, a fair number. I mean, most recently, Shakespeare in Love.
Of course, yes.
Where we got a kind of early music consort together to provide music for that. I've done Chorus of Disapproval many years ago. A really memorable one was a production of The Crucible, where we got a group of singers together and we sang some shape note hymns. These are wonderfully gutsy American shape note music, and so we've done that, and that was great. We haven't done so much recently, but in the 90s and first decade of this century, we did a lot of music, provided a lot of music for the outdoor production, the Shakespeare production.
You also supported the cast, myself included, with the Pitman Painters as well, didn't you?
Pitman Papers, yeah. I've always thought, you can look at the job in one of two ways. You can look upon it as being about being a musical theatre person, or you can look upon it as being a theatre musician. And I've always looked upon the job, and why I've enjoyed it, in a sense, some of these non-musicals I've enjoyed more than the musicals. I've always looked upon myself as a theatre musician, if that makes sense, or somebody who's got, not particularly brilliant at anything, but is kind of okay at a sort of spread of things, so I can arrange things and do things.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay, that's fair enough. The majority of our listeners will not agree with that, Gary. I think you sell yourself a little bit short.
Very kind, but I think it's true, actually. Anyway.
So, can you tell us about your first love in theatre?
Oh, in theatre?
In theatre.
That's got a bit personal.
We've taken a personal turn, haven't we?
What do you mean by my first love?
So, what got you into theatre? How did it all start?
Oh, well, how it started was, as I said, I wasn't really a music theatre person in that sense, so I didn't have this, great love of musical theatre which brought me to the Crescent. I happened to be teaching in a school where a guy called Charles Fulford came to teach, and Charles is and has been a member of the Crescent now for, probably 40, 50 years. And this was back in 1987, and they were doing a production of Pinocchio, and the MD, a guy, brilliant pianist MD called Ian Richards, wanted not to do all the performances. And I've got to say at this point that in those days, over Christmas, we would do something like 25, 30 performances of the Christmas show. Wow. So that was a heck of a lot. So he invited me along, and I met with Ian, and I ended up playing for some of the shows, so that Ian didn't have to play for all of them. And that's what got me hooked, really. And then I did various bits and pieces. I did Our Day Out with the Youth Theatre, I seem to remember. And then Ian decided, I think he'd got a lot of other work on, and he was playing at that point, and may still be, for the Royal Ballet. He was a pianist for the Birmingham Royal Ballet. I said, was I interested in becoming, head of music, taking on things? And of course I was, and it's built from there. And so I've kind of, my enthusiasms and my skills or whatever they were have developed while I've done the job, rather than being somebody who was passionate about music theatre.
Sure, yeah. So what's been the love of your theatrical life? Is there a standout moment in your time involved in theatre? Oh gosh,
this is one that's going to make me unpopular. So if we go, what is the favourite thing that I've done? It's really difficult. I loved doing Parade.
Yeah.
Parade I thought was just super. I really enjoyed doing Girl Crazy, going back in time. Sweeney Todd, all those kinds of things. But I've just really enjoyed my time here immensely. It's a wonderful group of people to work with, an immensely talented group of people, and so it'd be a bit invidious for me to pick one or two things, but though I just have done exactly that, in fact. So there you go.
So you've got plenty of experience now, so can you tell us about maybe the one that got away? So obviously you've done lots of great shows. Is there any show that's escaped you?
We almost did Titanic 2 or 3 years ago. Not the film, but the musical version, which I suppose has been out, I don't know, about 10 years now, which is a super score, and I can't remember who the music is by now. And I saw it at one of the smaller theatres, Charing Cross Theatre, and loved it. And we were going to do it, and then we found out that the Hippodrome were going to do it the week before we were due to do it. So we never did do it, and they're doing it again. So I think we might have lost that one. I would have loved, although it's, I think, beyond almost any amateur theatre, I'd love to have done Candide. And there is the one I still have hopes for is a great little studio musical called Operation Mincemeat. Do I mean Operation Mincemeat? Is that the film that's just...
I think that was a film that came out recently with Colin Firth.
That's it. Well, that's exactly that. There is also a musical called Operation Mincemeat on the same subject.
Okay, so that's related to the film.
But it's great fun, multicast, small band, and I loved it. I saw it at the Riverside Studios. I think something we did well. It's about the Second World War, and the British plant the papers on a dead body and float it off somewhere onto the European coast with papers that suggest that the invasion is going to take place in Calais, rather than where it actually does take place. There is a film called The Man That Never Was, I think, from about the 1950s film, something like that. But this is great fun, great. Nice. It's kind of Dick Bartonish, that kind of. It's super.
So, can you tell us about a time when you've died on stage? I mean,
well, I'm not an actor.
It might not actually be on the stage in your case.
I have to be very careful. Well, there was one occasion when I was playing electronic keyboard on stage. And it was being operated from the sound, and I started to play, there was no sound at all, and I was staring up and pointing at the sound people, and eventually we found out in actual fact I hadn't turned the keyboard on, which was a bit embarrassing in front of 300 people. So that's the one occasion I can think of. There are others, but I'm not going to mention because they involve the innocent.
Gary, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much.
No, my pleasure.
The best of luck with Into the Woods. I know I'm in it, but I'm trying to sound objective. But yes, all the best with it as well. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Into the Woods is a multi-award-winning musical by Stephen Sondheim. The musical debuted in San Diego at the Old Globe Theatre in 1986 and premiered on Broadway in 1987. It hit London's West End 3 years later in 1990, where Imelda Staunton won the Best Actress at the Olivier Awards for her portrayal of the baker's wife. Into the Woods has been reproduced many times in many places since, and is a firm musical favourite. The plot intertwines classic fairy tales such as Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Rapunzel and Cinderella, but gives them a modern twist. Happily, the Crescent Theatre is staging a production of Into the Woods for a week at the end of April. Opening night is on Saturday, the 29th of April 2023. Today, I'm excited to be at the band call for Into the Woods, which is why I'm sat here with two lovely, talented and skilled musicians, Lauren and Chris. Hello both.
Hello.
Welcome to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lauren, for the uninitiated, what is a band call and what are you and Chris here to do?
So basically a band call is where the first time the band will play together as a group, and the first time the singers, the actors will be accompanied by the band. So it's just kind of an opportunity for everyone to get a feel of what's actually going to happen on the night.
Right. So I thought a band call was the first time you were with the cast, but not the first time you were with the band. So it's the first time with your band as well?
Yeah, so it'll be the first rehearsal that the band will have at all with each other, which just happens to also be with the actors, which can be quite fun sometimes, getting to grips with everything at the same time.
Yeah. So, gosh, there's a lot to learn in a short space of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like in rehearsal so far, there's just been a piano, and so the cast are used to using a piano or backing tracks or something. And so hearing a full band, so you'll hear trumpets the first time, you'll hear saxophones, you'll hear drums, basses, all in one go. And so the cast can start to decide, oh, well, for my cue, I need to listen out for that bit. I need to listen for that bit.
Yeah.
Just so you're getting used to just the full band, which they'll have on stage.
And I suppose they've crafted their vocals to suit a piano.
So far, yes.
And so when there's different instrumentation, that might clash a little bit with what they've been rehearsing.
Yeah, it can sometimes take a bit of a while for them to get used to what's happening. Like even kind of when there's a change in pianist, it can throw people a bit just with them playing a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So when the whole band comes in, sometimes it can throw them a bit.
Yeah, I bet it can, yeah. Chris, is this the first time you'll have seen the music and met the cast? Well, we think it is the first time you've met the cast and fellow musicians, which it is. But is it the first time with the music, or is there more of a lead-up?
So I've been a rehearsal pianist throughout the process anyway, so I'm used to the cast.
So you've been immersed in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of musicians here, apart from me and Lauren, will be the first time they see the cast, first time they see the music on the whole. So I'm more used to it, which is good, because the piano part is very difficult for Into the Woods. Right. So I'm glad I've had the rehearsal process, so I can be in rehearsals and say, oh, it sounds like this, sounds like this, sounds like this, just so I can get used to it and get better and better. So it's definitely a interesting part to have, piano, for Into the Woods.
And is that a common thing with musical rehearsal process? Is the pianist is there to begin with?
Yeah, so the MD is always there. So in this case it was Gary.
And MD is the musical
director.
Yeah.
And so Gary's asked me and Lauren and other pianists to come in and sort of play the piano, just so Gary could then focus on harmony and singers and acting through song and things like that, because the piano part for Into the Woods is that involved.
Right.
So I've done other productions where I'm the MD and the pianist, and so I'll be playing piano while also listening to the cast and seeing the staging while playing piano. It's quite difficult.
That's a bit like acting and directing. That's quite tough.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yes, for Into the Woods, it's very complicated, and so Gary needed someone else to play piano just so he can focus on everything else.
So you're pianist, Lauren. We haven't said what you play, I don't think.
Well, in this particular show, I'm playing the cello part on the piano. But
why is that? Why are you playing the cello part on the piano and not on the cello?
I don't believe we had a cello,
No.
and I can play the piano, so we can just kind of program the piano to sound like a cello,
Right.
so I can play it on the piano.
Interesting.
But my usual instrument is the oboe.
Right.
That's my kind
So
of
you're
day job.
a multi-instrument. That's 3 instruments. Are there any more than 3?
Yeah, I play. Well, I don't actually play the cello. So I probably
Cheating.
4 pending 5.
Right. And what are the others?
So I play oboe, cor anglais, which is the auxiliary instrument for the oboe.
Right.
I play saxophone, piano, and then I'm learning the clarinet as well.
Blimey, that's amazing.
It's quite a few.
And when did you start learning all of those?
The oboe was my first instrument, so I started that when I was quite young. I was about 9. And then I've recently picked up the saxophone, so I've been playing that for about a year, and then I've only been playing the clarinet for a few months.
And once you've got one, is it easy to transfer the skills into a similar instrument?
It's absolutely a lot easier to pick up an instrument once you already play one, because pretty much you just need to relearn fingerings and embouchure. You don't need to start from scratch musically. So kind of learning to read music, learning how to deal with rhythm is not something I needed to do every time I learned a new instrument. So it's a lot easier.
Yeah. The crotchets and the...
Yes.
I can't name the others. What are they? Crotchets?
Quavers,
quavers,
semi-quavers, semi-quavers, demi-semi-quavers.
There you go.
Loads.
I was in an orchestra playing the drums when I was, a teenager. So I had a bit of skill reading the music, but if you don't use it, you lose it, don't you? So during any rehearsal period, there is a moment when the lines start to stick, the planned movements become second nature, and the performance begins to generate an energy all of its own. I think we've kind of agreed the band call isn't that moment. The moment comes later. How much later does it come? And
I think it depends on the process.
Yeah, it depends on the cast.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be during the tech rehearsal. Sometimes it can be during the run-throughs and dress rehearsals later, because by that time you've had the band 3, maybe 4 times, and so then it starts to. You get familiar with it and you start to stick. And
so you won't be at every rehearsal now. You come to the band call, and then what's the next rehearsal you're at?
Well, I'll be at every rehearsal.
Right.
And I probably will.
And you will.
Chris will be
so
as
you
well.
will, probably.
So the next rehearsal will just be a normal rehearsal, really. There's no, blocking or movement in a band call. So the next rehearsal will be kind of putting that back in, and hopefully the actors will have a better idea of what's actually going to happen musically on the night.
Yeah.
So it can kind of help put into place a bit better.
And how, when you're playing and you've got, when everything's settled down, how much of the production can you take in? Can you feel like you're part of it, part of the energy, part of the performance?
Yes
or is
and
it
no.
or is it always that you've just got to really concentrate?
Yeah, a bit of both really, because Into the Woods particularly is difficult to play, and so it's a lot of just trying to get the notes at the right time and play the right order. That's the first thing. But once there's a simpler song, because there are some simpler songs, I can start to appreciate the singers more and etc. and actually hear it the first time. But that will come probably later and not at the band call.
Yes, I think it's easier when you know what's going on in the show as well, because I've done shows in the pit where I've had no idea what's going on stage, because I've just not known the show, so it's taken me a good halfway through the run before I've gone, oh, that's what this show's about. So I think it kind of depends on your knowledge of the show and the difficulty of the score.
I wanted to talk about the pit. So, have you played in many orchestra pits? Are some better than others? Is it cramped? Describe to us what it's like being down there in the dark, because it's a strange setup, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I've only played in 2 pits so far. They're both at the Crescent, so I didn't really do musicals really until I joined the Crescent. So I've been both a conductor and I've been a pianist, and they have different limitations, because as a conductor, you have to have no space because you can have to move your arms, etc., and see the stage and face it the wrong way and all that stuff. But as a piano player, you are a little bit more cramped. But luckily, because a piano is so big, the piano has to fit, and so therefore you get a bit more space. But I imagine if you're a wind player, you sort of have 2, 3, or 4 of you quite squished into one small space.
I've done a show before. In all fairness, it was a pit. It wasn't a pit down beneath the stage. It was open, just a gap in the middle of the stage, kind of in like a horseshoe sort of shape, and that's where we were. But it was ridiculously cramped. There was about 5 of us squashed into this little row, and obviously we all had between 2 and 4 instruments. So we were all surrounded by a load of instruments and kind of elbow to elbow. So it can be quite
dark,
cramped.
Isn't it? And you have little lights over your music
in the pit,
sheets.
And
that's it.
I've almost banged my head as well because it's quite low as well.
Yeah.
And then if there's dancing happening on stage, it's all you can hear, just tap dancing.
You can just hear the feet of the dancers hitting the stage. And in terms of what you can see the conductor. Can you see anything else?
You can see conductor, you can see the music.
Depends where you are. Piano's normally right against the audience, so I'll have the conductor right in front of me, and I can see the bottom corner of the stage, maybe, if I'm lucky. Right. But that's it.
Yeah.
So,
and the conductor can see the action, can't they? Yeah. Yeah. And how does that? How can they? Is it on a monitor, or do they look up and see? Or?
They're looking up, so the audience will see the back of their head. Yeah. So they're facing the stage as well, so they can see whatever happens. Because there may be some visual cues. There may be other stuff that happens that has to be timed with music and set coming in, timed to music and things like that. So the conductor needs to know what's happening on stage at all times, which is why they're facing the wrong way.
So you're really pretty blind down there.
Yeah.
More blind than I thought. Actually, I thought maybe you'd have monitors.
No.
The actors have a monitor, in case they can't look down to look at
the conductor.
MD or the conductor. They have
I've seen those
MD
on stage.
You
can see the conductor keeping time.
Yeah, but we can't see anything.
No, but it's almost good though to think as a musician, I don't want to know what's happening on stage really, because I don't get distracted.
Especially if I'm
you want to concentrate.
That's the composer's job.
Yeah.
To not get confused and guide the band. So as a band member, I want to see the conductor, and that's really it.
Gosh, you're so much more separated from it than I thought.
Yeah.
And so can you hear the actors' vocals?
Sometimes.
I think it depends on how loud the band is.
Yes.
If it's quite a sparse moment, then yes. But if it's kind of all guns blazing, then not really.
No, for instance, the words, it's quite loud all the time. There's a lot of people downstairs.
Yeah.
So,
and you're so close to all the instruments, it must be very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is that for your hearing? Because I played the drums for all through my teenage years, most of my 20s. My left ear now, which I always stupidly had very close to my hi-hat, is done. My left ear is not in a great shape. How are your ears?
Sometimes they have screens, don't they?
Yes.
So
in
sound screens.
There are screens, especially if you're in the woodwind section and sat right behind the brass.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot more people wear earplugs nowadays. There's kind of a big push on hearing protection and hearing health at the moment, which is good.
Yeah.
So it's a bit less taboo, I suppose, to wear earplugs.
Yeah.
And
do you two stick them in?
I don't know, because generally I'm quite close to the audience, so I can escape most of the loud wind instruments.
I do most of the time, because I'm kind of in the middle of all the brass and the woodwind.
And the hearing things that you stick in, do they just reduce the hearing so you can still hear? But...
Yeah, you can still hear. They take a little bit of time to get used to. You can definitely still hear everything going on around you. You're a bit more kind of in your head with your own playing, you can hear it a bit more resonating.
Okay.
But it just kind of softens the sound a bit, just to protect your ears.
Yeah, it's sensible, I suppose.
Yeah.
When you're young, you don't care. You're down there having a good time. But when you're older, you're like, what? Sorry.
Yes. No,
yeah,
definitely.
I think it's especially if kind of we're being in this profession for a long time, protecting your hearing's always.
Yeah. Hearing's very important when you're a musician, I thought. Absolutely. So Stephen Sondheim, who scored Into the Woods, is a titan of the American musical genre and is credited with its reinvention. He lived from 1930 and died recently in 2021. I remember it was in the news, actually. His other musicals include West Side Story, Sweeney Todd, and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, amongst others. He is credited with music of complexity and sophistication, and I think you've told us that it's complex. Lauren, have you played much Sondheim? It is difficult technically from what we've heard.
I can't say I have. It is difficult technically. I think the piano part takes the most credit for that, but the key signatures generally are just very involved. So kind of whatever instrument you're on, it's gonna.
And what is it for the layman? What is a key signature?
So a key signature is how many sharps and flats you are going to be playing in. Yeah. So what key? So if it's in D major, it will have 2 sharps. So your key signature is 2 sharps.
Right.
But sometimes tends to write in keys that involve a lot more sharps and flats.
Yeah, like 7 sharps and flats. He likes an involved key signature.
Yes.
So the key signatures make it difficult. What else makes it difficult?
In Sondheim particularly, it's time. So he'll change time signature as well. So again, time signature is how many beats in a bar.
Yeah.
So
most 4/4,
most pop songs are 4/4, etc. or whatever. But Sondheim will go through a number of time signatures in one song.
I think particularly in Into the Woods, instead of 4/4, he uses 12/8 quite a lot.
Blimey.
So 4/4 and 12/8 are basically the same thing, apart from 12/8 is just kind of subdivided a lot more.
So how would you count a 12/8? A 4/4 is 1, 2, 3,
yeah,
4,
you
2,
think,
2,
yeah.
3,
you think of 4/4 being like da 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 da, whereas 12/8 is da ba da da ba da da ba da da ba da. It's the same beat,
Doubles
but
up.
it's now 3 rather than 2, really.
2 kind of in
Right.
each beat.
So it's like triplets.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
da ba da 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 ba da 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 da. So rather than da 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 da. So it's more complicated. It sounds more folky. That's why he's doing it.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to play.
Yes, a lot more half beats, a lot more third beats. Like, it's very
Yes.
difficult.
And what's a half beat?
So, oh God.
That's when you do a very short beat. Is it?
No, so half beat. So as Chris was doing before, if it's like da 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 da, and that's in 4, you'd be playing on the second one, the second da in that one beat.
Right.
If that makes
Yes.
sense.
Is that like the upbeat?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a bit like reggae.
kind
On the
of.
offbeat.
On the
yeah,
offbeat, yeah.
On the
Yeah.
offbeat.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, and he'll play some stuff where like there'll be 3 notes, but you're playing on just on the second. So dun dun dun,
Right.
and it's complicated
A lot
basically.
of counting.
Even like a simple bar is in 3, so it's literally da 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 da. My left hand is doing that, but my right hand is coming in a bit early on the last beat, just because.
Because why not?
Yeah, so I've got a lot of practice basically.
Wow.
Yes, and it's quick.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are some songs that are very
fast.
quick, and so
So how much practice have you got to put in to get to performing the standard?
quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Hours and hours and
Yes, quite a
days
lot.
and days.
Which is why I like doing rehearsals and be a rehearsal pianist, because
Yeah.
that's my practice time, really. And because in rehearsals you tend to do songs over and over again to get the blocking right and the lines right, etc., I then get opportunity to play the piano part loads and loads and loads of times. So it helps me. If I was just coming in blind, it'd be very difficult just to pick it up. Like, yeah.
So if you're a young, aspiring musician, you wouldn't start with Sondheim.
Probably not
No.
to start with.
No.
It's great to listen to, great to watch,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
to play,
definitely.
it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, it sounds straightforward, I think.
Yeah.
To an audience member.
I always kind of your kind of going thing is if it sounds easy, it's actually really hard.
Yes.
Like if someone's made it sound easy, it's probably one of the hardest things.
And do you enjoy it, music? Once you've mastered it, do you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's
musically?
great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really enjoyable to play. It's
Love
really
playing it.
rewarding to play once you've got your fingers around
Right.
it. It's really, really good.
Yeah. And is there any favourite Sondheim piece? I'm not familiar with any of them, but
What, is it a musical or a song?
a song, I
A
suppose.
song. Ooh. I like his ballads. So I like things like Losing My Mind from Follies. I like things like Keep Moving On from Sign of the Part with George and things like that. Like his slow ballady, like strings, those sort of songs.
Right. Losing My Mind and Keep Moving On.
Yeah.
So listeners, you can Google
They're
those
great.
2 things, have a
Is it Keep
listen.
Moving On? I don't know. But yes, it's great. No, they're great songs. But I also like the fast ones as well because it's fun to play. But they are more complicated, like Your Fault from Into the Woods,
Yeah.
because it's very quick.
Do you have any favourites, Laura?
I definitely agree with the ballads. I like the ballads. They're good. But I think again from Follies. Oh, what's it called?
So Follies is the name of
Could
the
I
musical.
Leave You?
Oh, Could I Leave You?
Could I Leave You?
Oh,
That's really good.
right.
It's like a comic song.
That's a good song.
It's very good.
Could I Leave You from Follies?
Yeah.
That's another one to Google, right? And Chris, how long have you been playing the keys? How did you learn and end up in orchestras for musical theatre?
So I started learning piano when I was about 11, which is quite late for most musicians, because I was playing violin first.
When do most musicians start then? If
Normally
11
like
is late?
3 or 4,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
really,
really young. Yeah.
So I was very
for
late.
things like piano, woodwind instruments are a bit different.
Wow.
Definitely for piano.
Yeah, so like I played violin, so
So
I
you don't decide, your parent decides.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my parents made me pick an instrument when I was like 6, and so I picked violin, and then I fell in love with piano a bit later. But luckily I could read music from playing violin, and so playing piano, it was a nice sort of extension. But now it's just piano for me. I don't play violin anymore. So I've been playing for a while, but until university, I didn't really play in many pits. I was sort of just accompanying singers and did concerts like from my local area, but I didn't really play in pits. But university I started doing some more, and then since joining the Crescent, I've had the opportunity to MD and conduct as well as just play and whatever. I enjoy doing it, but it takes a lot of time out of you.
And what are the tips you've got for aspiring, young musicians who either want to pick up an instrument or are starting down that road?
I think enjoy it first.
Yeah, definitely have fun with it.
If you don't enjoy it, it'd be a slog.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just have fun, enjoy it. If you love it and you're putting in the practice, then you can't really go wrong. But just have fun.
Yeah. But it's practice every day.
Yeah.
Doing a little bit every day
practice every day
is the most important thing. So even if half an hour a day, if it's every day, it's fine. But doing it an hour that week on a Monday and then leave it until the following Monday, you'll lose most of it. So it's every day.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I don't play the guitar, but I've got a guitar and I stick a few chords together once in a while. But it's just once in a while, and I'll get into it for a week, and by the end of the week, God, this sounds great. And then you pick it up again a month later, and you've gone backwards.
That's the problem. So yes, every day.
Every day. God,
or at least every weekday.
Yeah.
If you can't do it.
Yeah, very often.
So wow, what dedication for you to do it
it's
every single day.
definitely a lot more work than the face of it. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Blimey.
It takes a lot of effort to make it sound nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And just how much of your lives you must spend playing instruments because you're doing it every day. I think that's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of my life has been on music.
Yeah.
It's tiring.
It's a vocation, isn't it?
It is
Absolutely.
a vocation.
Yeah.
Yes.
You get less time for being a priest.
I know. I know.
And finally, no Backstage Pass interview would be complete without tinkling the quick-fire ivories of our backstage binaries. I'll read out 2 clashing notes, and you must pick the one that strikes a chord with your heart. Okay?
Okay.
Conduct or play?
Oh, play at the moment.
Any aspirations to conduct?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, cool. Rehearsal or performance?
Oh. Can I say both? I'm being boring.
No, you can't pick both.
Gotta pick one.
I prefer the rehearsal process personally because I think you can go more into the character and you talk about the character and things like that. It's like a study of the character.
You can eke it out. You get the depth.
Yes.
But the performance you get the
is great.
zing, you get the buzz.
The zing for the audience is also great. That's why I want both. But I'll pick rehearsal.
Cool. String or wind?
Wind.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Do you play any string? Cello? Cello? You don't say it like that, do
I
you?
played the violin. That was my first instrument when I was really, really young.
Right.
But then I moved on to wind instruments.
Why wind?
Because I play wind instruments. And...
Is it because you preferred playing or you prefer the sound or it's just what you do?
Yeah, I think so. I've spent a lot of time around wind players, I like wind instruments. My favourite instrument's the clarinet. So, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Percussion or brass?
Oh, again, I'll probably go for percussion for me because it's very helpful for a composer and not for a conductor as well. Because at a certain point, because I'm focusing on conducting on cues and sorting out what's happening on stage, the percussionist will just play a beat. I can just follow them.
Yeah.
So
you can go back to them and trust that
exactly.
they are still on the
beat. If
beat.
you've got a good percussionist, you're good. So yes, I'll say percussion.
Right. Acoustic or amplified?
Acoustic.
Why is that? Because there's more finesse in the sound?
I just don't. I've never really done acoustic. I've grown up a classical musician, so my instrument doesn't really tend to do amplified.
Yeah.
So my kind of only real experience with amplified stuff has been when I've got to uni and come to do stuff at the Crescent. So I'm kind of still finding my way with it a bit.
And the last one, sing or dance?
Oh, sing. I can't dance at all, so sing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thank you both for coming on to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast.
Thank you.
I look forward to being sat in the auditorium for Into the Woods and hearing the notes swell up from the orchestra pit, knowing that little bit more about the process and who it is that is sat down there in the dark. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, make sure you subscribe at podcast.crescent-theatre.co.uk or via Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get the next episode. You can find out more about the Crescent Theatre Birmingham and our upcoming productions, including into the woods by visiting www.crescent-theatre.co.uk or by following us on social media. And please, if you've got something to say, get in touch via our socials. Thank you for listening.
Amateur of Life and Death is a Crescent Theatre production. It was presented by Luke Plimmer and John O'Neill, the title music was done by Brendan Stanley, and it was edited by Kevin Middleton.